Today on Locked On Dolphins, we're looking into our crystal ball to make some predictions for the superlative awards for the 2025 version of the team.
You are Locked On Dolphins, your daily Miami Dolphins podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, Miami, welcome to another episode of Locked On Dolphins. It is your team every day here on the Locked On Network. I'm your host, Kyle Krabs, a lifelong Miami Dolphins fan, host of Locked On Dolphins, co-host of Locked On NFL Scouting, author of Touchdown Miami on Substack, NFL staff writer for A to Z Sports. Want to give a special welcome and shout out to our everydayers because it is your team every day. We don't just say it, we live it here on the Locked On Network. Today's episode of Locked On Dolphins is brought to you by Mazda. Just like there's more to every player, more dedication, more attention to detail, there's more to every Mazda vehicle. Stay tuned later in this episode for highlights in this week's Moving the Game Forward. Today on the show, we're going to take a peep into the crystal ball and going to explore some superlative awards that I've decided to take a hack at for the Dolphins. And we'll try to follow up at the end of the season. Hopefully it's a successful one. Hopefully there's more than 17 games to be played. But we'll follow it up at the end of the season, and we'll sit down and we'll look at who we picked here on Wednesday, September 3rd, the day before the 2025 season starts. And then we'll compare and contrast who we would pick for these same awards once the 2025 season has come to a close. We're going to be looking at the 2025 MVP of the Dolphins, Offensive and Defensive Rookies of the Year, Coach of the Year, which is looking at all of the head coach and assistant coaches and coordinators to try to determine whose job was the most impressive with the unit that they had, and then a breakout player of the year as well that is not a rookie. So with that in mind, let's start with the MVP conversation because there's a lot of different directions that this conversation can go. You can talk about, I believe the team's official winner of this award last year was Zach Sealer. You could talk about Tua Tagovailoa and the inherent value that he presents versus how the team is with and without him on the field. You could talk about Tyreek Hill. You could talk about Jalen Waddle. You could talk about Bradley Chubb. You could talk about potentially Minkah Fitzpatrick. You could talk about Jordan Brooks. You could talk about Aaron Brewer. You get a lot of options, I think, for most valuable player for the Dolphins in 2025. But I am going to make my choice based off of what I think we're going to see from a caliber of play, plus what I think is apparent with the value of this player with what this team looks like. I'm going to go with Tua Tagovailoa as the team's MVP for the 2025 season. He has talked at length about understanding finally the importance of him being on the field versus him being off the field. And it's not the first time he's talked about it, just like this isn't the first time that the Dolphins have said that they've had good team culture, when in years past they've talked about it too, and it didn't come true. And your true tests for Tua Tagovailoa are going to be measured in the heat of the moment, when there's a play to be made in a game that's close, or you're on the fringe of scoring territory, or it's fourth down, and the scary moments there happen when it happens in week 2, right? But for Tua, I reflect on the collection of variables that allowed him to play in 17 games in 2023. And that was a lot of judicious decision-making by him as a player. The style of offense obviously compounded that. There was a running game element that allowed them to have some balance and not put too much stress on drop-back passing. And Tua understood he was going into a year in which, he was playing on the 4th year of his contract. He'd had his 5th-year option exercised, but he had no long-term guarantees. He had no long-term security. And his situation's a little bit different in the here and now. But I think about the hot seat element of the entirety of the team. The general manager, the head coach, and the general manager has not been shy this offseason about Tua and his availability and his decision-making and impact on that. And I know there's some people that I've got a great deal of respect for their opinions who say, you're already overtaxing Tua's weight and responsibility to protect himself versus the average player. I kind of agree with that. I kind of don't. Like I sit here and watch guys like Tom Brady and Peyton Manning, late stage career versions of themselves, like earthworming balls and taking knees in the pocket and not trying to tackle guys. And I'm not going to ask Tua to explicitly do all that, but you can go above and beyond to mitigate the hits that you take as a player who carries the amount of weight that Tua Tagovailoa carries for the Dolphins franchise. And I thought he did that in 2023. And the first chance he had after he got the contract, he reverted back to, I'm going to try to make a play. Competitive greatness is what he referred to it as. We don't need competitive greatness in the third quarter of week 2. Right? We need competitive greatness with a big picture scale across 17 games. I want to know what that looks like. There's no question about the value that Tua brings when you look at the win-loss record, the points scored in games with and without Tua, how the ball moves the offense, understanding that the offense is tailored toward Tua. I think Tua Tagovailoa understands this year, and I'm not going to sit here and guarantee that means he's not going to take a hit and he's going to be guaranteed to have no appearances on the injury report all year long. But I think there is more, the leverage in what's at stake feels more in line with 23 than the other years when Tua had to stay healthy. And he showed that jurisdiction because he had a big picture individual at stake situation. If he didn't stay healthy in 23, does he get the contract extension? Does he have any leg to stand on for a contract extension? Certainly not at the dollar amount that the Dolphins ultimately gave to him. And I think Tua understands if this season goes down in a way similar to last season, your head coach, your general manager is probably going to be out. And as a byproduct of that, you might be back here next year because you've got a guaranteed salary, but your guarantees just about run up in 2027. It starts to have rolling guarantees. You're guaranteed at signing and your practical guarantees, like your 26 salary guaranteed in March of 2025. Beyond that, it starts to have a rolling effect where the team can make a decision and go a different direction if you make big picture football operation changes. And because of that, I'm going to pick Tua Tagovailoa to play the disciplined brand of football that the Dolphins need him to play as much as anything else. And maybe there's bad luck along the way. And if there is, that'd be really unfortunate. But control the controllables. And if Tua does that, I think the product you'll see on the field, as in line with the record prediction that we did yesterday, will have him in position to put up the kinds of numbers and have the team have the kind of success that they will need for everyone to feel a little bit better and calm down about the anxiety about the direction of the franchise. And in that world, in that scenario, I'd say Tua Tagovailoa is probably going to be your team MVP for 2025. That's my best guess. Who has the best season? So not the most valuable player, but like the best player. I think this conversation could go a couple different directions. I think Jordan Brooks is primed for a great season in Miami. I think Jalen Waddle is in position to have a great season. I think Aaron Brewer is in position to have a great season. I think those three guys, if you were going to say, not measuring your value to the team, but just what's your Madden rating, right? Like those might be the guys that leave the season with like, hey, they really balled out in 2025. What about the rookie class? We have some options on either side of the ball, limited on offense, but on defense, we certainly have no shortage of options for rookies of the year on either side of the ball. We're going to get into that next here on Locked On Dolphins. Make sure you guys stick with us. This is Mazda's Moving the Game Forward, brought to you by those who believe it's not just about playing the game, it's about redefining it, because these moments do more than win. They push what's possible. They remind us to go that extra yard, shift into that extra gear, and keep moving the game forward. This week's Mazda's moving the game forward player for me is my pick for the 2025 MVP, Tua Tagovailoa. I reflect back on last season, right? And Tua endures the injury, the concussion in week 2, and listens for 5 weeks about everybody talk about how Tua Tagovailoa has to retire and needs to walk away from the game. And Tua pushed his own career in his return into an extra gear and played some of the best football. And Mike McDaniel said this during his press conference today. Tua played some of the best ball as far as an efficiency standpoint of his career upon his return in those first 2 games back against Arizona and against the Bills, and then in that win against the Rams. And it was really impressive to see amidst that adversity, win or loss, Tua finding a way to stack some of his best performances of the season in the midst of that adversity. That's what keeps fans and players alike moving forward, always chasing the next great moment. When you follow what moves you, the unexpected is only the beginning. And just like there's more than to every highlight, there's more to every Mazda vehicle. Mazda, move and be moved. When the opening whistle blows on a new repair, get your crew moving forward with Supply House. Order today and see parts on your doorstep tomorrow with over 280,000 plumbing, HVAC, and electrical items for the most trusted brands in the business. Their real-time inventory and honest lead times keep you from punting projects, while their industry-leading customer service always has your blind side covered. If you need parts fast for projects, Supply House has next-day delivery. Talk about a game changer. Join the free Trade Master program today. Score serious perks like priority shipping, lower prices, dedicated support line. Visit supplyhouse.com to sign up for free and use promo code SHNFL5 for 5% off your first order. That's supplyhouse.com. Real people, real service. The offensive rookie of the year conversation's going to be pretty brief. You got 3 options, including a third string quarterback. It's Jonas Savaiinaia, Ollie Gordon, and Quinn Ewers. Here's hoping we don't have to see Quinn play this season, and that's by no shade of Quinn Ewers, but that's if I'm going to go out and say, hey, I think Tua does have extra incentive based on the weight of his own long-term security and the long-term security of those in the organization. I think he'll make the decisions that he needs to make to not put himself in harm's way. And if that is indeed the case, then he's going to be the MVP. It'd be pretty disastrous for Quinn Ewers to end up being the offensive rookie of the year for the Dolphins then. So that leaves starting left guard, Jonas Savaiinaia, and Ollie Gordon II, the running back, who is probably, right now with Jalen Wright being backed up, he is the backup or the second back on the depth chart. These 2 guys are both health willing, in line to have a very meaningful contribution to this year's football team. I think that's the thing that stands out to me. If you told me Ollie Gordon had 150 to 200 carries this year, would not surprise me. And I think that'd be a very healthy thing for the Dolphins. You start doing the inventory on Devon Achane and his workload. And if that's 200 carries and then another 60 receptions and he's getting the ball 260 times, that would lead the offense. But you still have room for somebody else to get between 150 and 200 carries, especially when you don't have a lot of short yardage quarterback runs on your menu because of Tua's build, and you want to mitigate those hits. So I will say Ollie Gordon's going to perform at a higher level. And I think the running back room has already created a necessity for Ollie Gordon to have a meaningful role from the jump. Now, Jonah's a starter, and health willing, Jonah's going to play over 1,000 snaps. But if you ask me between the 2 based off of the preseason looks, and I would not have had the same answer in May, and that's an important part of this job, right? It's my responsibility on the program to have an opinion for anything and everything at any and every given point in time. I can't be married to my priors. And when you have an opinion on anything and everything, you're going to be wrong, right? It's what do you do when you feel like you're wrong, when new information presents itself? And that's what when I assess the 25 outlook for Ollie Gordon and Jonas Savaiinaia, I think Ollie Gordon can be a tone-setting player for your offense. I think he can be a tone-setting player for your running game. I said this on the Joe Rowe show this morning. I think the biggest difference between Jalen Wright as a rookie and Ollie this year, based off the preseason reps, is I don't think either one of them's perfect. And there's an adjustment period with this offense and how they ask you to read the point of attack and how they, with your zone runs, how they choose you to cut and make decisions. A lot of the runs Jalen had last year felt like when he had to make that split-second decision and read the point of attack, his instinct was to carry the run to the perimeter because that's where the run was designed to go, even if you didn't have that edge to run the ball to. And that led to some negative yards, that led to some negative runs, that led to some no yards gained runs. Versus Ollie Gordon throughout the preseason, he's eager to stick his foot in the ground and get north. He wants to get north. He wants to get his pad square and run downhill. And that's why you've seen the yards after contact opportunities that Ollie Gordon has been able to afford. And because of that, I think your 2nd and 7s or 2nd and 6.5s instead of 2nd and 11s, those are a big deal. Especially when you add them up over the course of a drive. If it happens 3 times, I mean, it's an extra 10 yards. I mean, that efficiency alone is an extra first down. You might now need 2 first downs if you just tally those individual decisions on those individual runs and the yards that you gain versus no gain or a -1 yard gain. You might need 1 less first down for a scoring opportunity now. I think Ollie Gordon's going to be my pick for offensive rookie of the year. Defensively, got options. We got 3 defensive tackles: Kenneth Grant, Jordan Phillips, Zeke Biggers. You've got safety Dante Trader and corner/nickel Jason Marshall. I think you can make a very firm argument that the most important player is Jason Marshall because he plays the role as a nickel corner that you don't really have a lot of other attractive options for right now. You can put Jack Jones, Storm Duck, Juju Brents, Rasul Douglas, Ethan Bonner. Any of those guys going to play in the nickel? You could have a safety do it, where if Ashton Davis ends up starting and is available for the start of the year, have Ifitu Melifonwu serve as the big nickel in that regard. But I think Marshall, as a pliable player, and Melifonwu's got durability issues, I think he has the most important role because if Kenneth Grant misses a week between Jordan Phillips and Zach Sealer and Matthew Butler, I think you've got some players that can split the rest of the reps. If Jordan Phillips goes down, you've got Benito Jones. If Zeke Biggers goes down, maybe you just rotate a little bit less on that week. And Kenneth Grant and Zach Sealer and Jordan Phillips all respectively take a little bit more of a higher workload. And Trader right now is really behind the 8 ball as far as what his preseason and training camp look like. So I think Jason Marshall has the most important role, but that's not really the core of the question. The core of the question is who's going to win defensive rookie of the year for this team? I'm going to go with Kenneth Grant. I think Kenneth Grant had some great flashes. I don't necessarily know that he'll be the most consistent, especially early on. It might feel a little bit like chop at times, where you say, hey, this is a really nice rep. Hey, anchoring here can probably be more consistent. Hey, let's stay in this gap a little longer. Or I think Jordan Phillips, you know what the strengths and weaknesses are. I think there's a very clear pathway for him having that contribution. I think Jason Marshall's role is the most important of the rookies, but there's probably going to be some growing pains there. I think Grant, especially with the rush front around him, the Zach Sealers, the Bradley Chubbs, the Jalen Phillipses, the Chop Robinsons, the Matthew Judons of the world, you got a lot of support around you up front to get some one-on-ones. And Zach is, and I asked Zach this when I was down there at training camp this year, Zach's one of the best pick setters in football for twist, stunts, and games. And with that at your disposal, and then getting Bradley Chubb back to do a lot of that too, I think he's going to reap the benefits of that, Kenneth Grant. And I think the production's going to look good at the end of the year. And I think he's going to come on strong and really take leaps and bounds and growth because of just how naturally talented he is. So I'll go Ollie Gordon, Offensive Rookie of the Year. I'll go Kenneth Grant, Defensive Rookie of the Year. Who is the Coach of the Year? And who is our breakout player who's not a rookie? We're getting into that next here on Locked On Dolphins. Today's episode of Locked On Dolphins is presented by Yahoo Fantasy. The NFL season is right around the corner. You could feel the buzz. Fantasy football season is here. You might be cramming that last-minute research, drafting to try to build a championship squad. If you haven't joined a league yet, you are running out of time. You should play on Yahoo like I do and like I have for the last approximately 20 years on Yahoo. Yahoo's loaded with fun ways to compete, brand new features to help make the game even better. NFL season kicks off tomorrow, September 4th. Now is the time to start playing on Yahoo Fantasy Football. If you want to play instantly with friends, you can try the new Draft with Friends mode. If you prefer the classics, you could get your crew together and go head-to-head in private league. Or if you have no crew, you could join a public league. It's the easiest way to play. The NFL season kicks off on September 4th, so don't wait. Start your league now. Draft now at yahoofantasy.com/lockedonnfl. That's yahoofantasy.com/lockedonnfl. The NFL season is here. FanDuel's making sure you are ready for kickoff with this can't miss offer. Right now, new customers can bet just $5. And if that first $5 bet wins, you get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. I love with FanDuel that no matter what way you choose or want to play or what kind of bets you're looking for, they have all the action you need to get a little skin in the game for yourself. It makes every game more exciting, whether you're watching your team or you're keeping an eye on your fantasy lineup. It's quick, it's easy, it's the best way to add a little bit more energy to your Sundays and Thursday nights and Monday nights. So if you're ready to play, download the FanDuel app now by visiting FanDuel.com to get started. That's FanDuel.com to place your first $5 bet. All right. Coach of the Year. I think Mike McDaniel, if the Dolphins hit the stratosphere of wins that we ultimately ended up predicting, I think Mike's going to have a pretty good case because he will have not just been charged with optimizing the offense for Tua and troubleshooting the problems that ailed the Dolphins depth chart last year and pushing the right buttons with a transition away from Jonnu Smith to Darren Waller and redistributing the targets to Jalen Waddle and getting Malik Washington involved and appeasing Tyreek Hill and keeping Tua Tagovailoa on the straight and narrow with making good decisions as a football player in real time and fixing the offensive line and the culture of the team, and Minkah Fitzpatrick coming in as a leadership role and remaking a secondary that the team had all kinds of problems with for years about that group being dialed in, and the closeness of the team and facilitating that with the 11-day road trip. You name it. If the Dolphins have the kind of season that's 10-plus wins, Mike McDaniel has to be your choice, in my opinion, for Coach of the Year on the staff. Now, if they float around 500, if they miss the playoffs, if they're 8-9, but amidst the secondary concerns, they have another top 10 defense and a bunch of significant metrics, I think that paints the picture for Anthony Weaver to lay a serious claim to that job. If the defense falls apart and falters and they give up a bunch of points, but this team runs the ball till the cows come home, they keep Tua Tagovailoa upright, they score a bunch of points, they're competitive and play 17 meaningful football games, maybe miss the playoffs, maybe are playing for a winning record in Week 18 again. I think you maybe look at Butch Barry with Patrick Paul and Jonas Savaiinaia and what they've done thus far and would presumably continue to do with Aaron Brewer and his growth and assimilating James Daniels to that group. I think you've got a great chance to be there. Maybe Tyreek Hill comes in and goes for 1,100 yards this year, but he's super dialed in and he's super motivated and he's a great teammate and he doesn't make a fuss all season long. And Jalen Waddle has a career season. And then maybe you're talking about Robert Prince, the wide receivers coach. Maybe all three of these rookies become stalwarts. Maybe Kenneth Grant blows the doors off it. Maybe Jordan Phillips becomes one of the best young nose tackles in football by the end of his rookie season. And maybe Zeke Biggers realizes the potential of what we thought we were maybe going to have in Raekwon Davis. And if all of that happens, Austin Clark's going to have a really good argument to win the coach of the year for this team in 2025. At the end of the day, I have to have congruency with the predictions I put out there yesterday. And I have to put congruency out there with what I've talked about for my MVP pick and the record pick. And maybe this is me plucking daisies, right? Maybe this is me peddling that copium that some people like to say that I sit here and spew on this show. But if I'm going to sit here and say, if Tua Tagovailoa is going to stay healthy, and I believe he's got as much motivation as he had since 23 when he did stay healthy, because the longevity of him and those around him is at stake with how this season plays out. And if he does stay healthy, I think he's going to have a team MVP caliber season. And I think if he does stay healthy, I think the team is capable with the schedule of winning at least 10 games. Because there were a few coin toss games I didn't give the benefit of the doubt for that I heard from you guys about already. I thought 10 was pretty fair. Somebody called it a milquetoast prediction. I'm like, I don't know. Everybody I listen to the national media says Mike McDaniel's going to be fired by Halloween and this team's going to stink out loud. But this year is less about, hey, we need this player, that player, and this player, and that player, and we need this big personality. We need that splashy, sexy acquisition at the expense of X, Y, and Z. It's about, we got young talent. We got a young nucleus. We've kind of picked who our guys are. It's about coaching and player development. And if this year plays in that way, and this team has a healthier outlook, this team actually does authentically have their money where their mouth is and they get along, I think Mike's going to have pushed a lot of buttons in that regard. I liked what I've seen. I liked what I've heard. I liked what I've heard publicly. I've liked what I've heard behind the scenes. What happens the first time the adversity hits? Who steps up? What creates the adversity? If it's not Mike McDaniel, I would be willing to bet Anthony Weaver is going to have as hot a stock as he did last year when he was getting head coach interviews. And if it does not work with Mike McDaniel, based off of what we know right now, my choice for an heir to that position is already in-house, and his name is Anthony Weaver. So I have high expectations for Anthony Weaver. I don't think he's got a loaded group. I think he's got some loaded groups. I don't think he's got a loaded unit from door to door. He doesn't. But I think he's got now, with some of the summer acquisitions, I think he's got a high enough floor with the corner room for a 17-game season. I think it's going to be a strong unit. I really do. And I think they've got some composition things that are different that could allow them to maybe solve some of their problems in years past. But if I'm going to pick this team to win 10 games like I did yesterday, and I'm going to sit here and predict that Tua is going to stay healthy, I think Mike McDaniel has to be my choice for coach of the year, which feels like a cop-out because he's the head coach. Of course he'd be the coach of the year. The team did good. But he's like leading odds to be first coach fired nationally. Breakout player who's not a rookie. This feels like a Malik Washington spot to me. This could very easily be a Patrick Paul spot too. I think those are the two best candidates that I can present to you for this breakout is Malik Washington and Patrick Paul. And look, we're to sit here and say this season is about coaching and player development. That's not a bad place to be with a second and sixth round pick from 2024 draft as your two shortlist players for breakout player of the year. I think Malik is really jiving with Tua Tagovailoa. It seems like they have outstanding chemistry. It sounds like they're on the same wavelength. And I can see him assuming a larger and larger role. And I think for all the concern about Darren Waller, I think you're going to see this team implement a lot more 11 personnel and try to be a lot more balanced out of 11 personnel to have more success out of 11 personnel, running and passing the football. And that third wide receiver becomes a big piece of that puzzle because your receiving tight end is presumably either Julian Hill or Tanner Connor. Like, that's not a big profile player. Right? So I think Malik Washington's going to have a big say in that. So I'll go Malik Washington for breakout player of the year. That's going to do it for us here today on the show. We have crossover Thursday with Locked On Colts tomorrow, and then we're going to get into the game script and the game plan to beat the Colts on Friday. Hope you will hit subscribe, come back, and see us again tomorrow. I'm Kyle Krabs. You can keep it locked in right here on Locked On Dolphins. It is your team every day. Appreciate you guys as always for checking the show. Make it a great rest of your Wednesday. I will talk to you all again soon.